talking about the movie Snatchers. No, this is not an adaptation of the fantastic Mega CD game from yesteryear. It's actually a sci-fi sex teen comedy horror by directors and writers Steven Seeders and Benji Kleedman. And this was actually, interestingly, originally a series, I believe a web series, that has been re-edited into a full-length feature film. And I've got to say, it actually plays pretty well as a feature movie. And I would say this is like I say, a sex comedy horror for Generation Z. So let's discuss. It's not a kids movie when I say that. I mean, it's young, it's aimed at sort of teenagers or young adults, really, as its target audience. So what is the story? Basically, we have this kind of young girl who was originally a bit of a nerd, but she's kind of got in with the popular kids now and is ignoring her once best friend, who was still kind of a little bit of a nerd. Anyway, in the kind of race for popularity, she ends up sleeping with kind of like one of the popular guys. However, this guy has actually been infected by some type of alien parasite. And this girl now seems to be almost instantaneously pregnant and giving birth to an alien parasite, which then goes on to attach itself to various people, causing them to be like zombies, doing its bidding and creating chaos. And ultimately wanting to procreate its own species to dominate the earth. And it's up to these now young girls who are kind of reunited, friends from the past, to try and kind of like obviously stop everyone shagging themselves to death, basically. So what do we think about Snatchers? This is a fun, raucous comedy with plenty of gore, body count and blood splatter. So it is aimed at a, well, I guess it's a hard film to really say who it's meant to be aimed for, because our protagonists are very much Generation Z. So there's lots of kind of like text to speak, that sort of thing. So if you're an older person who likes kind of like 80s kind of like horror films and stuff like that, you may be put off by kind of how contemporary the protagonists are and how of its time, if that makes sense, they seem to be acting along with kind of everyone. I mean, there's familiar tropes here, you know, the popular kids, you know, parties wherever it ends up kind of with their clothes on, etc. But the attitudes and the kind of the way these kind of people are is kind of more of today's audience. I've got to say, I was really impressed with the energy of the directors here, because this is really high energy. I was definitely reminded, and I've got to say, I think it's maybe influenced by the likes of Sam Raimi and Edgar Wright here, because there is definitely influences from Evil Dead, and obviously you've got things like Invasion of the Body Snatchers to a degree, but it really is, I would say, you know, kind of Evil Dead and maybe like Shaun of the Dead, that sort of thing, that type of ballistic type of camera work. And lots of kind of like fun quips. The movie's actually fairly amusing and has some kind of quite good one-liners and little visual gags, stuff like that. I thought the cast were absolutely fantastic here. I thought everyone did a really good job in portraying slightly kind of over-the-top characters that you would necessarily see in comedy movies along the lines of kind of American Pie. I guess you want to say this movie is a little bit like The Faculty in its kind of tone. I suppose that's the nearest movie I can compare this to for a kind of a horror sort of teen comedy in a way. But obviously, like I said, for today's audience, for the tech-savvy, social media, you know, Twitterverse type teenagers that you'll have for today, rather than the kind of the teenagers of the 90s and 80s. There are some pretty decent and fun monster effects here, using a lot of practical effects, and there is actually quite a lot of gore here. There's a scene that involves a police station that reminded me of the scene of the original Terminator, where we have Arnie kind of going into the police station and causing havoc. It reminded me a lot of that, and I wonder again if that was an influence here. The movie is very fast-paced. It doesn't really kind of let up, I would say. So if you're liking more of a thoughtful kind of cerebral movie, then maybe not this one, because this is just kind of like a balls to the wall comedy horror with lots of kind of splatter and goo and stuff like that, and a very kind of kinetic style way of editing and camera work. So certainly stylistic choices that I feel will appeal to some and maybe not others. for me personally, I actually kind of quite enjoyed this. Originally, I felt maybe the beginning of the movie, the character development was a little bit lacking of some of the characters, but I feel they made up for it as the time kind of went on. I would have maybe seen a little bit of like a little bit more between our two main protagonists here, these two girls. A little bit more about what they were like previously. As we can only guess to that really, but it's never really kind of shown in any way. Think kind of like Charlie Brewster and Evil Ed from kind of the Fright Night kind of movies. In regards to criticisms, I've got to say this is probably going to fall more on a taste thing than anything else. I don't think this movie actually has any real glaring criticisms in regards to literal faults that it has for the movie that it is trying to be. I actually think it's a pretty solid kind of fast-paced horror comedy that succeeds in pretty much everything. I think it's good cast, good acting, fun characters, lots of kind of gore, decent special effects. I think the main criticism here really is more of this: is this going to be the sort of type of movie that you're going to be interested in, or do you like the more cerebral, Don't Look Now, that sort of thing, that kind of like movie sort of really. So if it does sound like you do like a kind of like balls to the wall, fast paced sex comedy alien horror movie, this is the one for you. I actually give this one a 7 out of 10. I found it quite enjoyable, maybe lacking a little bit of characterisation at the beginning and maybe a tasting that will put something off, but I've got to say it was a lot of fun and very well made. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.